or want to share your thoughts, please do that online. But now I want to hand over to Addy Pope. Addy, off you go.
Thanks. Hopefully I've shared this correctly and people can see. So I'm going to follow on from what Brian was talking about before lunch, if we can remember that far back through our sugar coma, to the exciting topic of metadata. I remember standing up at an AGI event 10 years ago and talking about metadata. Unfortunately, everybody was drinking beer and it didn't really go that well. Metadata is not a particularly sexy subject to talk about, but if you take all of the labels off your food tins at home, what are you going to have for tea? Nobody knows. It could be surprising. So this might be old news for many, but there's probably some tips that we can take away. But why is metadata important? I've managed to zoom the browser in there, so let's just zoom that back out. Well, when you take lots of images, it's fine. I can tell that this is a glacier. It's in Svalbard. I've only been to Svalbard once, so it was probably taken in 2002. But if you start going to the field multiple times and taking roughly the same picture, or a picture of the same thing, how good is your memory? How reliable is your memory? Oh, it's still zoomed in. Well, if it's like mine, not very reliable at all. And the more you collect, the harder it is to remember what and why. And digital photography has really given us a bit of an advantage. We can now have, there's something called an EXIF file, which is included with all digital images, which contains loads of useful information that we can make use of, where our brains don't necessarily connect the things that we're trying to remember. So we're going to have a look at how we can use EXIF, so exchange image files, to help us in the field. But we're not going to exclude people that have got old photographs. So we're all old enough to remember before we had digital photography, where we've got lots and lots of boxes at home, perhaps, of interesting photos. And on the back of them, if you were organized, you wrote the date to try and remember. But if we're scanning them, we'll have different information. Usually the date, when you scan it, is the date that you scanned the image. But it doesn't necessarily give you anything, does it? So can we change that date? And the answer is yes. So we're not going to exclude old images. We're going to look at new images and old images and see what we can do with them. I'm also going to talk a little bit about removing metadata. Oh, why would you get rid of any metadata? It's meant to be there to help you. Well, actually, you can do, maybe you do want to remove metadata. Maybe you do want the picture to be anonymous in terms of its location. So you're protecting either the identity of a subject or the identity of a place. So there's a good reason to actually destroy metadata. And that's possible as well. We can think about some of the ethics around that later on. So the plan is show you a little bit about how to add and edit image metadata. And then we're going to upload those images to ArcGIS Online, because it wouldn't be a presentation for me without some sort of Esri technology baked into it. And then we're going to think about maybe a more useful way of augmenting the metadata which is captured with a digital image. And this really does lend back to Brian's talk, where you've got EXIF image metadata, which is there and it's useful, but it's not really what you would want captured with the image. We're going to use another tool called Survey123 to look at how you can build a little data collection form, or your students can, to get that really important metadata whilst they capture the image in the field. So editing your images and the EXIF information within it. So I just used a simple Google search will reveal lots of tools, and I picked one at random, tested it, and nothing bad happened. I suppose with a tinfoil hat on, I uploaded the image to the web, and I'm assuming that it doesn't reside there and somebody's nicked it. There are other applications where you can download an executable onto your machine and the image doesn't leave your machine. But I decided for the purposes of this exercise, I wouldn't go through my IT team and have to wait to get permission to install. I would just use a web tool, and my image wasn't all that sensitive. And I've used something called the exifer.net. And it has an interface like this, and you can just upload an image very simply, and you can see the EXIF information. So there's a little video here explaining what I did with the steps. We can all read, hopefully, but we can look at it. This, I should have said at the beginning, Dave posted the link to this presentation in the chat window. So if you want, you can have a look at it in real time, and it will be there for you to use if you wish. So I've uploaded my 3 images, and I'm ready to click on the EXIF button. which would produce this. And I can see that there's an image. When I click on the image, it's not in the right place, actually, even though I had my GPS on and I had a really good view of the sky. For some reason, it decided to put me in Keswick, but I'm actually on top of a hill in the Lake District. So I'm moving my marker to the correct position where this image was taken. And then when I hit save, I'll get a download of that image, which now has the correct geo information. So in this case, I'm editing a non-accurate location to be more accurate. Not questioning why it was inaccurate, I'm just improving it. Other examples would be if you want to represent a bridge which is flooded, and that's the asset that you're taking a picture of. You're not going to go and stand on a bridge when it's flooded. It might fall down. So you take a picture of the bridge, but then you move the lollipop onto the feature. So you're away from it, but you want to represent that location. And these videos will just play. And the output, well, this is a bit underwhelming unless you know where the picture was, but I've now moved, edited my EXIF information. And if I open that up, it will be in the correct location. Pretty much edit anything, not just geolocation. You can change the dates, hide the camera information. So on dates, as I said, when you scan your images, your old film images, they'll come out with today's date if you do it today, but you would maybe want to have the date that the picture was captured, so you can edit it that way. You could also just use this tool to simply delete the location. How many of us hands on heart know whether or not the photographs that we take on our smartphone today are actually recording geo information? So this is where it's like consciously volunteered geographic information or unconsciously volunteered geographic information. If you haven't delved into the settings of your phone, it's probably on by default. Tinfoil hats at the ready. And then we can add these georeferenced images straight into ArcGIS Online. And the advantage here is that if you think about, I get lots of questions from students saying, I just want my points on a map where I took my things. And it's like, well, you can do it. You just need to upload them to ArcGIS Online. But that might seem like a very difficult step for them to think, oh, I don't really have any GIS skill. Well, all you really need to do is know how to create a zip file. So you add all of your images into a zip file, and then you can just upload them into ArcGIS Online, and they should appear on your map as little dots. And this little video short is just showing you how to create a zip file and then log into ArcGIS Online to do that. So there we go. Add zip to ArcGIS Online. You click your device, you select your zip file. Say open. Tricky bit, you have to just tell it that it's a zip file. I made that mistake the first time and it didn't work. I hadn't read the instructions. Second time, I got it right. I add in a bit more metadata to tell me what these pictures are. So they're the lakes run that I did. And then I add some tags and just a summary. You would do a better job of this than I am. That's for the example. And then you just hit the button, which is obscured by the little bit of Teams. But there is a button there, and it uploads it. And that results in your features being in ArcGIS Online. And now all you really need to do is add them to the map. And I suppose the beauty of this is not just that you can then zoom in on the location and you can see the pictures where they were meant to be. So there's a lovely picture. I'll go and find another one. I think the real advantage here is that you can now start to combine these photographs that you took in the field with other data that you've got in the field or other data that other people have. So in this case, it might be the Environment Agency's flood outlines. I think we ran through an area that floods get back into Keswick. It could be the national park designation. It could be a Ramsar site. It could be anything really, but you'll find that information online. The students can simply add it to their map. So now it has a wider context. Not difficult at all. Should have deleted those bits. Sorry about that. What about creating slightly more meaningful metadata? Well, we can do that as well. So useful information. So this is leading on from Brian really. EXIF data is great, but does it really provide the information on the context of the image or the content of the image? So here I've got a glacier and I have crudely sketched up some things that might be features on it, such as moraines, debris, what else is there? Crevasses. How could I have captured that information? What was this photograph? Why was it taken? Could I have a better way to sort of have that information at the point of capture in the field? And the answer is yes, and it's not actually that hard. It's about creating a form in Survey 123, which allows you to capture additional information. There's a set of resources to help you or your students achieve that. They're linked in here, but the Blue Peter moment is your lunchtime exercise was designed for you to capture a picture with some additional contextual information. So for those of you that actually went out and collected some data at lunchtime, thank you very much, because it makes the next bit slightly more interesting. But I suppose if I go back to here, what I've done is we've created help guides such as the digital field notebook. So I would never say you're going to get rid of your field notebooks. They're completely irrelevant in our digital age. They're not really, because it's really difficult to sketch on a digital device, especially if it's raining. And if you go to the lakes, that's just a no-go. So sometimes the simplest approach is the best. But what can we do to augment that with some modern data capture skills? So what I'd always suggest is things like you've got day one, site one, so D1, S1. So in your Survey 123 form, that becomes the site ID. And in your notebook, you've got D1, S1. So then the student has both an analog capture for that site and a digital capture, which then combine. Does that make sense? So somebody said, what if they lose their phone in the field? They'll be completely ruined. It's like, mate, they are not going to lose their phone in the field. They're far more likely to lose their field notebook. They care about their phone. It's one of the most precious things that they have. They will look after it. Field notebooks will end up in bogs or lost on coaches. So the important thing is we're not trying to replace, we're trying to augment. And the Blue Peter moment, well, Dave's going to come up and talk us through this section, aren't you, Dave? You're not looking confused at this point. So Dave put together the data capture form, and he's now going to explore some of the results of what we captured. Go on to that.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, so we went out, or some people went out. Oh, that's really in the wrong corner, and collected our data. So we were hunting around the campus. People went around about. We explored our lunch. People probably even looked inside these magical boxes to find that that there was a positive thing there. So we collected some images. We've collected some data about those images. We kind of got them all on a map so we can do some stuff with them. And I've taken this map and kind of put that into just a little app that we can now start to sort of browse and sort of hunt around. So I can filter the dots and the photos on the map to show only the stuff that I can, if I can get to the little. There we go. I want the apply button there. There we are. So I can filter down the dots on the map, get rid of the ones that aren't the sustainable development goals that I'm interested in. So I'm starting to build a little tool that not only lets me collect data, but start to manage that data, or starts to allow me to publish that data. So this might be a citizen science project or a kind of crowdsourcing effort to collect this data, which is kind of exactly what we were, or what this lunchtime was. It was a little bit of a crowdsourcing effort to collect some data. If I log in to the behind the scenes bit of this form, which means I've got to remember my password at the same time with an audience. It's always a kind of high pressure moment. Which I have. So what was showing on my map there wasn't all of the points that were collected today, because I have a suspicious mind, and I anticipate that, particularly if I'm working with students, I'm anticipating that not every image that comes in my survey is going to be one that I want to then share back out with everybody else in a public facing map. I'm assuming that someone somewhere is going to try and undermine my effort to do good work. And in this case today, one of those someone somewheres was me, because someone went out and found that there was a statue with bums, and they could write bums in large capital letters. That's about as bad as my behaviour got today, but at least it was sort of indicative of what some bad behaviour might look like. So what I've done kind of behind the scenes with my map here is there was a little question that you guys didn't see. So when we collected our data, no one had to look at this verified question, only me. And in this little verified question, I've got the option to control what's shown and what's not shown. So I've got a little kind of filter happening behind the scenes to either display or not display my bum's photo. Or any other photos that kind of fall into that category of stuff that perhaps I don't want to broadcast out. So I've kind of built in a little verification step where maybe I've got to get eyes on everything before it goes out into a public sort of facing forum. If this was a more sensible citizen science project, then maybe it might be that actually I want to check that the identification of this thing is right before I kind of pump it forward, or I want to make sure that that there's not some kind of revealing information in here that might sort of undermine the safety of an individual. Whilst we're also in here, again, I'll pick one of my photos. I didn't know it was yours. If I knew it was yours, I would have done that as well. We can see in there that this was my work phone, so I'm not very great on my security settings on my work phone. So we know what version of phone my employer gives me, where I took that photo, what direction I was facing to take that photo, what camera settings. So all of that, again, all of that unconsciously volunteered information that Addy mentioned is all there. And often our students don't realise that they're giving away all of this information whenever they post their photos on social media, do whatever they're doing. So it's quite nice as a little, just as a moment to kind of hook them into that and say, hey, have you seen what came with that photo that you sent here? There's a little kind of opportunity to make that, or to sort of shine some light on that. So yeah, so we had a form, and you collect some data into that form, and that form sent some stuff somewhere. But how did that form come to be? Let's get through there. So
the library will be closing in 10 minutes. Please take any items you wish to borrow to the self-service issue machine on the ground floor.
Thank you very much. We'll let that announcement happen. So it was built using Survey 123. Survey 123, Addy will tell me if I'm wrong here. You all have access through your institutions, through your ArcGIS subscriptions, through the CHEST agreement, unless there's an institution here that isn't part of that, in which case Addy will talk to you later and recruit you into the next set of licensing for the CHEST agreement and all of that. So so you can all do this. You can all get access to this. And Survey 123's in its kind of simplest form, and the simplest way to describe it is it's like Google Forms with a map. So there's a series of question formats, question types, data types that you can pop into there, and there's location bits. The location question that I've got down here was, well, what was the location that you're taking this photo in? I could not have a location question, and I could just take that data from your devices. You're collecting that data anyway. It's going to be uploaded, but by having that location question, we get to do some of that editing live. So where Addy was talking about editing the EXIF information to maybe move that photo of a bridge back onto the bridge, or to that photo of the area that I can't go and stand in, but I can take a photo of it. I can shuffle that across. So I can do that in the field in real time, and make sure that location is going to be correct, or just check that where my GPS thinks I am is where I actually know I am. That might be a point, like as we're today, but equally it could be any of the other it could be another geometry, so it could be a line or a polygon. Why are you not? There we go. So I can choose how I record that location in there as well. So it's going a little bit further than perhaps the EXIF information on my phone might be, or my camera might. I can say, okay, well this photo is of this area, or it is of this linear feature, not just this point location. And then every one of these questions is just a question type from the list of questions, dragged over and dumped in, and then configured to be the questions or the options that I'm interested in. Again, there's kind of lots of how-to guides, and that how-to guide that Addy's popped into the story map will kind of help you with that. The one single piece of advice that I'm going to give is, if you want a number, use a number. Sounds really cryptic, but if the thing you're interested in collecting is a number, use a number question. There are lots of enticing and appealing looking other question formats. There's like nice Likert scale formats, or a rating where you can give between 1 and 5 stars. If you use the 1 and 5 stars, it kind of feels like you're going to say, okay, this is 5. But actually it's not. It ends up being a little bit of text that says this is 5 stars. And then it means you can't do numbery stuff with it. You can't do sums. You can't present it as maybe a proportional symbol, because the GIS doesn't know that what you've got there is a number. So it sounded cryptic, but if it's a number, use a number. That's my single tip. So yeah, simple little form, pop together, and my data then kind of pops out with locations, with images, with whatever I've configured there to be the data that I'm interested in. I'm back to Addy.
Thanks, Dave. And I think the final part of this presentation is coming back to what Dave was saying about destroying metadata or thinking about what you do. And so the single thing that I enjoy most about the EFL showcases is learning stuff. I always go away, usually like Derek in his in former years has always said, here's 2 things I think you should think about. And you're like, oh yeah, they're really obvious now that I know about them. You always get some thing. And hopefully one of the things that you might get this year is this, the locus charter. And it's really about doing no harm when you collect geographic information. It's thinking about what you should do. This is a group of people that have put a considerable amount of effort into thinking about how we should collect, store, analyze, maintain, and destroy geographical information. So there's a life cycle of field data. So plan, collect, store, security access, verify, process, analyze, publish and visualize after project phase. What should you be doing? And if you are going to collect geographic information, you should probably think about this. There's a good example, and it is biology, where people got excited because they were tracking mountain lions in a national park in the States, and then they were making the map public. And it was great. People could look at the animals as they were moving around. And then the hunters started to go, oh yeah, they're moving around there. And look where they come out of the park. We're not allowed to shoot them in the park, but as soon as they come out, they're fair game. And they put a delay on the time signal, but it didn't matter, because if you just looked at it, you could find the tracks. And they're creatures of habit. They use those tracks and highways. Their highways, not our highways. So the hunters then had information that they never before had. So this cycle hadn't really been followed, well, because it didn't exist, and it was at the emergence of that tracking. And they have some founding principles as well. I'm not going to read them because it'll get boring, but it's a really good document where people who deal with very sensitive information, which may have either volunteered geographic information, be that conscious or unconsciously volunteered, think about how we should process that data and what we should do to store and destroy it and protect people. So that's my sort of gift to the conference this year about thinking, because it's quite new. It's in the last couple of years, and we know about it because we're one of the organizations that got involved and thought this is a good idea, because nobody's actually formalized it. We all think we're doing best practice, but no, Trevor might have a really good idea that we've not thought about because his brain's different to my brain. And they've got together and smashed out sort of 10 principles. So if you don't know where to start, it's probably a good place. And that's it from me. So we've got 5 minutes before the library closes. Should we stop sharing and then go back to the?
Brilliant. Thanks so much. It's the end of a long day. Thank you so much for your time. It's lovely to have people here at the